Hello and welcome to the Retirement Planning Podcast, your trusted source for navigating the path to a secure retirement. Your host and guide on this journey towards financial peace of mind is Darrin McComas. On this show, we'll delve into everything you need to know about retirement planning, from investment strategies and risk management to maximizing your Social Security benefits and crafting a resilient financial plan using the bucket plan financial process. Join me as we bring you insights from top financial experts, share stories of successful retirement journeys, and provide practical tips to help you build and preserve your wealth. Let's embark on this adventure together as we strive towards a future where retirement isn't just a dream, but a well-planned reality.
I'm Darrin McComas, owner of Evergreen Wealth Advisors, and this is Jason Fox. He's an advisor.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah. We're going to do a 3-part series entitled "It's Not What You Make, It's What You Keep." And I think that's it's such a cool line, and it's so perfect for this time, especially with the markets being volatile and
so
a lot going on.
Yeah, so many people make a lot in the good years, and then they freak out when the market turns around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This first part 1 is going to be talking about giving back your gains. Part 2 is going to be talking mostly about taxes, because I think a lot of people don't take that into account when it comes to retirement planning. And then part 3 is protecting your blind side, because it's not about what you make. Again, it's about what you get to keep at the end of the day. Part 1 here, we're going to talk about, we've had a lot of conversations with people the last couple months. We're talking with people all over the country about their retirement plans. And time again, we talk with people and their sole focus is on their rate of return. How much money they made last year, how much money they made in 2023. And it's all about, making 20, 30, 40% returns.
Right.
In our opinion, it's a not the best way to look about planning for retirement.
Yeah, we've had multiple conversations, but one that comes to mind is we had a gentleman who had almost his entire retirement portfolio in Tesla stock. And of course, when Tesla was doing well, he felt like he was a genius. This year, not so much. And then he came into our office and was concerned, rightfully, because that particular stock has dropped roughly 30% since the last time we had a conversation with him.
Significant drawdown. And the thing we were trying to redirect his focus on was he has to take a required minimum distribution.
Right.
He's taking an RMD based on his account value on December 31st of 2024. When Tesla stock was much, much higher, that account was much, much bigger. Now, Tesla has had a nice correction, to be polite, and he's trying to figure out how to generate that required minimum distribution that he has to pull out. And he's going to end up, at the end of the day, if Tesla doesn't recover by the end of the year, he's going to have to sell a lot more shares of that Tesla stock to pay that tax bill.
Right, exactly.
Another gentleman we talked with, he bragged about his 30% returns the last couple of years. And we're not going to name names, but again, the focus was just on how much accumulation we're going to have. And for us, you have to shift your mindset in retirement.
Yeah.
You're working, you're 30 years old, 40 years old, 50s. You're in that accumulation phase where, we want to grow those 401ks and IRAs. But as you get close to retirement age, it stops being about those returns and those accumulations. And when you have enough money to last you your lifetime, do we need to put it all at risk and get caught in a financial crisis like 2008?
Right. Yeah. Some of the terminology that we often use with our clients is talking about driving on the highway. When you're in your 30s and your 40s, you can drive at 75 miles an hour on the highway. That's no problem. But once you get into retirement, that's equivalent to driving in a residential area. And you don't want to be taking on an unnecessary amount of risk, driving 75 miles an hour through that residential area. It's time to dial it back, start going 35, and just take it easy and let that accumulation phase that you've worked so hard at do the work for you. Let your money work for you.
Yeah, and what we're talking about is using our system, the bucket plan system,
right,
where we take a portion of that money, we get it off the freeway, we get a little more conservative. We call it the soon bucket, which is a bucket of money that's going to last you the next 10 years. And it's going to account for the income you need, the taxes you're going to have to pay, as well as maybe any required minimum distributions or major purchases in that next 10 years. We want that money invested more conservatively, at least our clients do. And if there is a crash, right, just imagine this. You're driving through your neighborhood at 75 miles an hour and a dog runs out in front of you, right? You're not going to have that time to react. And bad things happen when we go that fast in a neighborhood with a lot of stuff going on around us. And you got to change your mindset in retirement and be like, I need, at least with a portion of our money, maybe we should look at creating that soon bucket that's carved out more conservatively. So if and possibly when those markets crash, we know we have a source of income that isn't going to be down nearly as much as that later bucket, which can be invested more aggressively.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to kill the opportunity for growth. That's not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about is shifting the mentality, understanding the phase of life that we're in, and then coming up with a plan that maximizes that phase of life without subjecting our clients to unnecessary downside risk.
Yeah. Because in retirement, it's so much more than your returns. It's about cash flow, right? Making sure you have that flow of income coming in, rain or shine, where you don't have to change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think it's a miserable way to go through retirement if you're literally looking at the stock market every day, you're watching CNBC and seeing if it's green or red. I've talked to countless couples where the wife and the husband argue consistently, and it's because the husband typically is watching CNBC and the market's red and he's all angry and upset, and now
wants
that
to cancel the vacation and
that anxiety kicks in, and then the wife is mad at the husband, and then when the markets are up, it's right, we're up here on a high and let's schedule 5 cruises, and it's this up and down roller coaster, and it really can cause a lot of strain on marriages and relationships, and it's just not a lot of, doesn't, at least to me, it doesn't sound a fun way to go through retirement.
Absolutely.
Blowing in the wind and changing your lifestyle year in and year out depending on what the markets are doing.
Yeah, financial stress is a very real thing at any age, but when you're in retirement and you don't have the capacity to maybe go back to work or to generate income outside of your nest egg, it's all the more stressful. So if you can put a floor under yourself and guarantee that you're going to have a certain lifestyle within retirement, then at least in our opinion, that makes a lot of sense to do something of that nature.
Yeah. And a lot of people, there's several studies out that show people that have their floor covered live a happier and healthier retirement than those that have all of their income dependent on the markets. And then you throw in taxes, which we're going to get into more in part 2 of this episode, as well as legacy planning and what if there is a long-term care event and protection planning and things like that. But again, it's not about what you make, it's what you get to keep and get to fund your lifestyle in retirement. And we talked to a gentleman, he wanted us to have a competition, right? He wanted to give half of his IRA to one advisor and half to us. And let's have a race to see who can make him the most amount of money. And I don't know what the timeline was. Is that 1 month? Is that a year? Is that 10 years? Obviously, we weren't too interested in that kind of competition because in our view, it goes totally against the bucket plan philosophy that we believe so much in. And obviously, hopefully not a good fit for us, but we want to re-educate and hopefully get this individual to see that there's so much more than just chasing stock market returns.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see how that goes, but maybe a conversation for another day, right?
I do want to hit on this concept, and we'll throw this graphic up on here. It's about market losses and recovery. A lot of people think, well, if I lose 10% in the market, I just need to get a 10% return the next year to get even. And that's not how the math works. Right. If you lose 25%, it doesn't take a 25% return. It takes a 33% return just to get to back even.
Yeah. And that's only 25%, which is a fairly common drawdown. But if you go to, let's say, 2008 with a 50% drawdown, then you got to double your returns.
Yeah, now you got to get 100% returns in the next year or two to get back even. What a lot of retirees don't realize, though, is you're most likely going to be in the deaccumulation phase. You're going to be drawing assets at the same time if you took a major market hit. And then that makes the recovery you need even that much higher to get even.
Subjected to a sequence of returns risk, which I believe we have some other videos regarding that if you guys are interested in that.
Yeah, and let's just run through an example. We have a 25%, call it crash in the market, and we're going to apply the 4% rule everyone talks about.
Sure.
Where you're taking out 4% of income in retirement. Let's just use a round number. Someone has $1 million in their IRA. They're taking out 4%, which is $40,000 a year. After that withdrawal at the beginning of the year, you're down to $960,000 in that IRA account.
Yep.
If from that point you go through a 25% loss in the market and all that $960,000 is exposed to the market, you just lost $240,000.
Yep.
And now your account is down to $720,000. Remember, you started with $1 million, now you're down to $720,000. To get back even, we got to have a $280,000 gain, which comes out mathematically to about 38, almost 39% gain in the market. Historically, the S&P 500 has been somewhere between 8 to 10% annualized return. So you got to get 40%. It's a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And most recoveries take a number of years, 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, depending on the recovery we're talking about. And when you're in retirement and you're taking money out of your IRA or your 401k, you don't have that kind of time to spare, right?
Exactly. And if it takes 2-3 years for the markets to recover and you're consistently having to pull that money out, you may never recover. Let's take an extreme example. Go back to 2008. The markets crashed around 50%. Again, $1 million account, pulling out 4%. After that withdraw, we throw it in the now bucket. We have 40 grand sitting in cash, 960,000 left. That hits a 50% market crash. We're down to $480,000. And what do we need to get back even to the $1 million, right? We're after $480,000 loss, we're at $520,000. It's going to take 108.33% to be precise just to get back even. Think of how many years that will take. That's assuming that you shut off your income of $40,000 a year to get that recovery.
Yeah.
The math, it's really hard to calculate all that math when you're withdrawing that 4% each year, but it becomes a huge problem. It's that sequence of return risk that we keep.
The bottom line is if that happens early in retirement, for most people, in our example, somebody who has $1 million to live off in retirement, it's going to destroy their retirement. Yeah. They might have to go back to work. They might have to scale back their style of living, but certainly it's going to have a deep impact on their plans.
I find interesting the 4% rule now becomes the 8% rule. We're having to withdraw over 8% to get that same $40,000 when our account has lost 50%. So This is where the bucket plan can really help mitigate that sequence of return risk. And it's about having 3 buckets of money, a now bucket, a soon bucket, and a later bucket. The now bucket is designed to be a 12-month bucket where you have enough income as well as a comfort fund or any planned expenses, right? We can cover that next 12 months and that money's safe and liquid. It could be sitting in your bank account, in a money market fund.
Sure.
It's there. We don't have to worry about it being invested in the market.
Yeah, it's easy to access and it's completely safe. And maybe collecting a nominal interest rate like in a money market, for example.
Yes. And then the soon bucket, this is really the secret sauce of the bucket plan. And There's a lot of bucket systems out there, but a lot of them don't have this soon bucket strategy. And for us, we look at your soon bucket as a 10-year bucket of money that we are going to look at. What kind of income do you need over the next 10 years? What kind of taxes, inflation, any major purchases that you may have over those next 10 years? We want to make sure we have that next 10 years covered with investments that aren't going to be exposed to the full market volatility, say as the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ. So it's much more invested much more conservatively. Yes, we're trying to keep up with inflation, and it's going to depend on your risk tolerance, but the idea is that money is growing at a more conservative pace.
Yeah, and this allows us when there is volatility in the market, specifically when the market is down, we don't ever have to sell assets that are down and subsequently lock in a loss for our clients. And so our clients are put into a position to succeed no matter what the market's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And huge.
Yeah. I keep thinking back to that gentleman with the Tesla stock. But what if Tesla goes down for 3 years in a row? He's just going to have to sell more and more shares each year to generate that same amount of income. And pretty soon, even when the market does recover, you just have less soldiers on the battlefield to work with. Yeah. And that recovery isn't as great. And then the later bucket, we love growth. We love the market. We're not anti-stock market, and neither are our clients. But that later bucket is positioned with the right amount and invested according to our clients' risk tolerance. But really, it's there for long-term growth. We know that there's very few instruments out there that can generate wealth over, if you have time to stay in the markets, like the stock market. And for a lot of our clients, that's going to make sure they don't run out of money in their later years. Right. It's going to be there to protect their spouse, heaven forbid, if one of them's not there and they lose a source of income. And a legacy planning, leaving money behind for their beneficiaries is important too. And that's that later bucket strategy. So I love the bucket plan system because it really mitigates so many risks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned an important point there, is that we're not anti-market, right? And we love the market, but the market is one tool in the toolbox, right? Yeah. And it's important to know how to use it, when to use it, what pieces. The market's made up of many different types of tools, right? Yeah. And so knowing what tools to pull out of the toolbox and at what time to pull them out is so important in retirement. It's important at any time, but much more so in retirement, because there's a lot of bombs out there, if you will, that can go off if you don't know that they're there. They're landmines on the playing field.
And markets are honestly impossible to predict. And again, I just think chasing returns, especially with almost all of your money or a large percentage of your money, trying to outdo the market or be smarter than your advisor. And while you might win a few years, usually over the long haul, it doesn't work out so well. Yeah, I think most people that try to day trade, there's a very high percentage that do not make it very long for multiple years.
To that point, I heard a statistic not long ago that 88% of hedge fund managers, so these are very intelligent, very well-educated individuals who know the market extremely well, and 88% of them fail to outperform the market.
Yeah, so this is, again, another reason why chasing returns usually does not work out in the long run. Yes. I always find it interesting people talk about their returns when the markets are up. They never talk about their returns when the markets are down. No one talks about 2022 and what their drawdown was, but they'll sure brag about how well their accounts did in 2023 and 2024. And
absolutely.
Again, returns, comparing advisors, I just think it's not the right strategy. You need to have, it's a multifaceted approach. It starts with a plan. Investments are important, but it's not the only thing we should do.
Yeah, it's just the wrong mentality. And we don't even mean not comparing advisors. Absolutely, you should see what's out there and see what's available. But if your only strategy or only mentality is high returns year after year, particularly in retirement, then you're not seeing the full picture.
Best of luck to you. Yes. You're not a good fit for what we do and the people that believe in our system. We're going to wrap up this episode, but again, I can't stress it enough. It's not what you make, it's what you get to keep. And what good is it to make good returns one year and then give it all back the next year? Especially when you're withdrawing money in retirement for income. That road can lead to disaster if you don't have a well thought out plan. And the cash flow, so much about cash flow and taxes in retirement and protecting your blind side. So next episode, we're going to dive into, it's not what you make, it's what you keep when it comes to taxes. This is an often overlooked component. People always say, I got $1 million in my 401k. And we're like, no, you don't. Nope. Like, what do you mean? You do not have $1 million in that 401k. Subtract out 15, 20, 25% in taxes. And that magic number of $1 million is not what it appears to be on the surface. So
that pre-tax designation is pretty important.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into how you can minimize your taxes in retirement while utilizing the bucket plan system and save yourself thousands of dollars by doing some proactive tax planning and tax management. All right, we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much. And we'll be back in a few weeks with that next episode about taxes and keeping what you've made.
Yep. See you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Planning Podcast. We hope we inspired you to make changes so you can live your best life. If you want to find out more about what we do, or you want to have a holistic wealth and health financial plan, please visit our website. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it widely with your friends and family. Financial planning and advisory services are offered through Prosperity Capital Advisors. PCA is an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in the state of Ohio. Evergreen Wealth Advisors and PCA are separate non-affiliated entities. PCA does not provide tax or legal advice. Insurance offered through Evergreen Wealth Advisors are not affiliated with PCA. Information received from this podcast should not be viewed as individual investment advice. Product discussions and illustrations are hypothetical in nature and will vary based on many factors, including but not limited to age, health, product, insurance carrier, and product design. You should consult the insurance carrier website and policy for detailed information pertaining to the registration status of PCA. Please contact the firm or refer to the Investment Advisor Public Discourse website disclosure statement as set forth on Form ADV from PCA using the contact information herein. Please read the discourse statement carefully before you invest or send money.